we covered puppet pins and puppet rigging. I just covered how to bring in an advanced Illustrator import, so I'm going to switch over to puppet pins before we go into rigging. Now, in class I'd made an octopus, and I just quickly broke this down into 3 shapes. Each one's on its own layer. So I've got like the head, and remember, you want rounded edges so that you can hide where they overlap with your character. So I want to show you, if I put one puppet pin here on the tip of this octopus tentacle, the puppet pin tool is right up here up at the top. So I do that and I move this, the whole arm is moving because it's not anchored to anything. So I'm going to hide the head. So if I have one there, let's try like the middle and then one at the end. Now it's anchored down to something. So that when I move this pin, you get greater flexibility and options with your animation. So I'm going to put the head back on. Let's pretend this is the first position I want. And let me move this off of that tentacle, okay? And that. And this is the other reason I did it with layers, so you can keep everything apart from itself. Once you create pins in your animation, it's going to be under effects. Let's see, right here. Yep, puppet. And then it'll show you each pin on here. You can select whatever pin and you could rename it. That would be under the different settings that's in your notes. I just want to show you, so I've got my pins. I'm going to move forward in time. Now remember, if you have the pins close together when you move them, you'll get a faster speed because it's moving over time. I just want something slower because it's underwater. I want it to be a little bit more flowing and organic. So I'm not going to move it a whole lot. And I'll have this move up a little bit in the body. So what this is doing, I'm going to press the U key on my keyboard. See, there's my pins. I could select the pin and right click, and that's how you rename your pins. So it's under Mesh Deform. So you see how it automatically created my keyframes, and now it is animating them across time, and all I did was just move them. And you could move individual pins at different times. So if I want to bring this down a little bit or up a little bit, you'll see just a keyframe added at that one pin. And you just do that for each layer you want over time. So if I want to animate the other tentacle, I'll start moving about here. First I have to select it. Here it is right here, and I add my pins. Now remember, you want it to be anchored to something, or else it's just going to drag away. So I'm going to put one at the end, one at the middle, and one at the beginning. So then I go forward in time. Like I said, I want a slower motion, so I'm putting the keyframes further apart to give me a smoother motion. Oops, let me undo that. See how I added a new pin. Now, see, that's to add a new pin. You see a little pin? Now you've got the arrow. That's to move your pins. And you can see the motion path. So there you have it. So if I select both of these layers and hit the letter U, now comes the fun part of selecting all the keyframes. Like I said, I just did that by clicking and dragging inside, hover over one, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease, and now I can change the motion of these in the speed graph. Remember, you always grab the influence handle right here, the round part, not this part, not the square, the round part. So now it'll go much faster out and then slow into that movement for that one pin. You could already see a bit of drag happening where this one's coming up further. That completely changes the look and feel of the animation. So that is the basics of puppet pinning. So I'm going to hit U. Now, I started with the octopus because an octopus doesn't have any bones in its tentacles. And you got to think, if you've got a character, where the bones are and how they should be behaving. So I'm going to use the head for this example. If I put a puppet pin at the top, let's do the edges like that. Now, I'm going to go over a little bit in time and give it like a undulating type of, breathing in taking in some liquid from like that. See how that's happening? Now I'm going to hide the tentacles so we can focus on the head. I'm going to do something extreme here. I'm going to go forward in time. I'm going to undo what I do here. I'm going to drag this one way over here. So you see how the whole shape is moving. I just did that to demonstrate what I'm going to do next. If you want areas to not be as flexible, you've got three choices. You've got your puppet pin, this puppet overlap, and puppet starch. I'm going to add a starch pin to the middle right here. And this will explain the next part of this. Show mesh. So I click that right here. You have to have the puppet pin selected. It's right here. All right. There's right there. Here's the mesh for right here. The amount, I can change the amount, and now I'm changing the extent of it. Now this middle part is going to be starched down. And you can change how much you want it to be starched or whatnot. All right, so now I'm going to go forward in time, grab my puppet pin tool, and move this. And already you see this is not getting deformed as much as it was originally because of the starching we added to it. So that's just a quick look at how to add, to view the mesh. Now, if this isn't going over the whole character, you can change the expansion and the number of triangles to get smoother detail. Now you see it going off past this layer, so I know everything will behave as I want it to over time. So if I want this to go up like that, you can see the mesh deforming, and you can start figuring out what's happening a little smoother and easier. So if I bring that down a little bit, and I'm going to turn off the mesh now. So you can see how the shape is changing over time, and this part is less fluid and more rigid because of the starching that we'd put in it. So that's how to show your mesh when the puppet pins are selected, how to expand your mesh and the number of triangles, as well as adding starching. Overlap is for whatever is going to be on top of the mesh. So if this had some line art or something, like say it was the cuff of a boot and there were some lines or some like some fur at the top of that boot, you'd put some overlap pins on top of that so that as the object moved over time, that was on top of the mesh rather than underneath, and it'd get distorted a little bit less. It'd help make it a more convincing animation.